Alright, let's go! We're on ampersand prime, self-referential, alright. Okay, alright, what's going on? So A cannot be 0, so at least one of these two has to be mine. Alright. Does that mean anything else? Oh, A can't be 2 or 3, which means exactly one of these three and exactly one of those two is mine. Interesting. And this also means, okay, and since there's exactly one here, D cannot, well, this D cannot have 0 next to it. And since D can't be 3, you can't have both of these be a mine. And therefore, if this is a mine, that means this D would have to have 2 next to it. But if it has 2 next to it, then this would also have to be a mine. And so, as a result, that means that, yeah. First of all, that's a mine. Okay. Because this A can't have 0 next to it, and it can't have 2 next to it, so it has to have 1 next to it. And that means A equals 1 has to be filled in. Yes, okay. And what I just concluded here was that, like, okay, if this is a mine, then this can't be, because there can only be 1 here, and it can't have 3 next to it. But if this isn't it, this is going to have 1 here, so this D will actually have 2, which will force this to be a mine, which would make a third mine next to the D, which would be a contradiction. So this is not a mine. Okay. Second of all, if this... Wait. Okay. Actually, I'm not sure. Okay. So E can't be 0, 1, or 2. So it has to be 3 or 4, right? So let's say this is gone. Then it would have to be D equals 1, because this D will have 1 next to it. So it'll be like that. Okay? Second, that also covers this. And at that point, D cannot be 2 or 3. But it could potentially be 4. Okay. But A can't be 2 or 3. Oh. Okay. Because that already has 1 next to it. It can't have any more because that would make it have either 2 or 3, which it's not allowed to have. So there we go. Okay. And as we said before, this A, which can basically only be 1 or 4, it has 3 spaces next to it, so it can only be 1. So in this scenario, that means that's not a mine. But now the E, well, it has to have 4 now, because it can't have 0, it can't have 1, 2, or 3 now. So all of these would have to be mines. These D's, what is D's situation right now? It can only be 1 or 4. This only has 3 spaces, so it can only have 1. This, again, same deal, and this as well. Okay? So that's like a lot of stuff that happens if we assume that this one is not a mine. Alright. Sam? Now we really have to think about what happens in this case. So this is the 1 around the A. So these are both dead, and that means this is a mine. Okay, cool. And what that means... Okay, D is allowed to be 0 and it's allowed to be 2, but it can't be 1. And these already have 1, so they all need 1 extra around them. That means this is gone, and that's a mine, because this is going to be the extra. Because it can only be 0 or 2, it can't be 1 or 3. So even if there is 1 extra here, this one would, yeah, okay. So one of these two is a mine, I wouldn't know which one though. And furthermore, this E is once again, it must be 4. So there. And that's actually everything, right? This is safe, that's safe, and that's a mine. I think I might be figuring this out. Okay. Now, what does this C tell me? The C has 1 next to it right now. It can't have 2. Okay, so with my current markings, the red and blue markings that is, let's just look at this, right? Which was under that assumption, right? I can mark it in that fashion to say, like, yeah, the assumption for these was that this was, yeah, okay. Now, this C, it has 1 next to it, but it's not allowed to have 2 next to it. But it is allowed to have 3 next to it. Oh, okay. Oh, but with the current markings, it has 2 next to it, 1 here and 1 there, right? And that is a violation because this square is not a mine. So that is a contradiction, and therefore this is a mine. That forces this and that, which then, whoa. Oh, because B can't be 0, 1, or 2, so that means it has to be 3. It only has 3 spaces, so those are mines, yes. Okay. And then if this is, yeah, alright. So now D's can be 0, 2, or 4. It must be an even number, basically. So that means exactly one of these two is, but I don't know which one. This C needs 1 more mine next to it, at least. It must have either 3 or 4. Or, yeah, it can only have 3 or 4, because those are the only things that are open. Which means one of these two has to be mine, but I knew that already. But if the C equals 3 is marked, then this is dead. And that means this C can only have 3, which means that's gone, which means this would be a mine, right? So that's one way for things to happen. However, if this isn't a mine, then this would have to be, but that would force C equals 3 to be a mine, so that would be a contradiction. So in fact, this happens. Alright, and there we go. This might get really interesting in... oh. Oh, yeah. Because if this isn't a mine, then A can't have 0 next to it, so it has to have 1. So then the A equals 1 has to be filled. But if this isn't it, then A can't have 0, so it would have to have 1. But if it has 1, then the A equals 1 square has to be marked. So, like, that's every time. Yeah. And that was... and it was able to pick that up from... okay. So it's weird that, like, flicking on stuff will actually fill stuff in this mode when, like... okay. So what else do I have to think about? D is not allowed to be 0. Okay, but it already has 1 next to it, so rip that. C, B, C, and D are not allowed to be 1. So this D needs at least 1 more mine next to it. This A needs to have at least 1 mine there. Okay, I don't know if I can do anything with that. This E cannot have 4 next to it. That's interesting. Okay, so like if this isn't a mine, for instance, which is such a weird thing to say, but that would mean these C's need at least 2 next to them, and in fact, this C only has 2 spaces, so it'll be like that. This E now has 3, which forces this and kills those, because it cannot have a 4th or 5th one, because that square is empty. This C needs a second one with it, which... second or third. Well, okay. This D has 2 right now, but D is not allowed to have 2. It must have 3 or 4. And that means this A has to have at least 2, and in fact exactly 2. Because it cannot have 3 or 4, because one of these are going to have to be marked. Yeah, I guess as long as there is a letter on the board, one thing in the column has to be a mine at least. Because that clue will have some number of mines around it, thereby forcing one. Yeah, okay. So that's another pattern. Yeah, okay. Now, what is the situation? C, okay. This D has 3 right now, so it's kind of okay, but I do know already that this C needs 1 more. It obviously can't have 2 more because I would put 5 on the D, which is not allowed. So it has to have 1 more. And that means one of these two has to be a mine. But that would put 4 on the D, which means this is the case. and so it's like this. Does it? Yes, because A cannot have 3 next to it, right. C has to have 2 at least. But I think this is the extent of what I get from that assumption. In this mode, it might be kind of hard to tell if something is the end of what you can deduce, but oh well. Okay, so if this is a mine, that means the C has 1, and okay, these C's already have a mine next to them, so they're not going to have 0 mines next to them in particular, which means it still needs at least 1 more on them, so one of these 2 has to be mines. But again, this E is going to have, already has 1 mine, it's going to have another one here, which means it's going to have at least 2 mines next to it, which means the E equals 2 is going to have to be marked. Oh, I see. The D has 2 already, okay. So at least one of these 2. But then, okay, E will have either 2 or 3 then. This particular E will have 2 or 3 mines next to it. For example, if the E equals 2 is marked, and then one of these has to be marked, that E already would have 3 on it, which would force the E equals 3 to be marked anyway. So no matter what, that is going to be marked, okay? Now this D already has 2, but the C needs at least 2. So if we assume, let's assume that the A equals 2 is not it. That would force this to happen, which would force D equals 2, thereby forcing this. Now the C has 2, but the, yeah, no, that's a contradiction. Okay, so A equals 2 has to be marked as well. Which means D equals 2 is not enough. So only one of these 2 can be mines, right? So D has to be either 3 or 4. Let's just say this is marked though. I mean, this C has 2, but the C can have at most 3 next to it. So either the 2 or the 3 have to be marked. Let's say the C equals 2 is not marked. That would force both of these to be mines. But E is 3, so that would kill both of these, forcing D to now be 3 or 4. Well, that was known already. Okay, but this C, it needs to have 3 next to it, which means this, but that puts 5 on the D, so that's a contradiction. Alright. But now that this E has 2, and we'll have a third one here, neither of these can be mines, and okay. This C has 2, but potentially could have 3. Oh, but this D already has 4, so actually that would force this to happen. And that might be everything. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. I'm actually really liking self-referential. I don't know if that will continue when the board gets bigger, but this is really fun. Okay, D is always 4. Okay. This C... Oh, E is 3. It has 1 here. So that means either... Yeah, okay. And C is 2, obviously. But it could be more. This C needs another one. Okay, okay. Looking at the red markings... Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so with the red markings, we're in this situation. Alright, this C has 3 right now, which means if this isn't a mine, then the C would have 3 around it, but the C equals 3 cell would not be marked. So actually that would be a contradiction. So this has to have it. Now the C has 4 around it, which means the C equals 4 also has to be marked. But now this D has 5, which is a contradiction. So, what? Did I do like the opposite of what I was supposed to? Okay, yeah, I think I did. So what I'm saying is that, yes, that has to be a mine now. Okay. And what is this also? Okay. So if this is a mine, then the C would have 3 around it, which would force that. Yeah, and that causes the same problem. So the point is, that has to be safe. Which means that's a mine, which means that could or could... Yeah, okay. Could go either way. This D already has 4, so that's gone. Yeah. 3 out of 4... Oh, I just get mine count and that's it. So one of these two has to be the one that isn't the mine. That means both of these have to be. That means the C equals 3 is a mine because this C has 3. So I click this, it'll fill that in. Okay. Alright, self-referential 6x6. Okay. Now we have 6 letters and they can go up to 5 mines each. Alright, this B has 0 on it, so B equals 0 must be marked. This B has... Okay, it's allowed to have 0, so that's fine. Alright. C... Right, it can't have 0 or 2, and since it only has 2 available spaces, that forces it to be 1 around this C. C is allowed to have 3 lines. This D... Do we have much information on D? No, not really. E, A? A, no, has a lot of open spaces. So D can't be exactly 1 mine. That's something, maybe. Okay, this C cannot have all 4. It could potentially have just 1. Let's say this isn't it. Then this C is only allowed to have 1 in its zone, which means at most 1 there, but D... Okay. I guess we'll think about this for now. That would force this, and then these would be gone, and then D would have to be 0 because of the fact that it's not allowed to be 1. And then, yes. Now this E would have to be at least 1. Wait, D... Okay, but it could be 2 around here, so that's allowed. This A must be either 0 or 1. And in fact, okay, but this D already has 1 next to it. So that means it has to have 2 next to it. Which it will have naturally, because this C already has 1. Ah, and in fact, if this is not a mine, that would make a contradiction, because this C needs to have exactly 1 mine in these 2 squares by the fact that it can't be 0 or 2, so it can only be 1. But the D, it can't have exactly 1. So yeah, this is always a mine, actually. So that assumption I made was actually just required, alright? Which means like all these markings are yellow now. But I don't want to redraw them all, so I'll redraw the assumption in green. So now I'm just working in green as my first layer of assumptions. Oh, and that forces that, right? B is 1 as well, okay. Now, alright. So I'm just going to mark these. Now I can go back to yellow. Okay, so if C is equal to 3, that allows the C to have 3. And since it already has 2, it forces it to have exactly 3. And what that does is force exactly 1 mine among these 2, and therefore this is forced to be a mine, because, well, the D will have to be 2 now. But now this A has 2 mines around it, and that means, since it can't have exactly 2, and it can't have 4 either, that means it has to have 3. Which means, and since this D is not allowed to have 3, that has to not be a mine, and that's a mine now. This A needs 1 among those 2, but okay, that's fine. Oh, wait. Oh. I saw the b equals 2 and I thought that was like a clue, but no, that's a blank square. Okay. Alright, so I can say at least that much. Alright. Now, what about E? E has a lot of options. Okay. D in this circumstance, okay, it's allowed to be 5, but that's not going to be relevant because none of the D's have 5 spaces around them. This A has to be 3, so yeah. But I think this is kind of all I get, but I guess it forces that in both circumstances. Interestingly enough. Oh, this D has 2, so that forces this to be safe every time. Okay. Cool. Now apparently they're just like a bunch of forced mines everywhere that I don't know about. Alright. This E has 2 or 3 mines. Or, wait. No, it doesn't. It has 1 on it right now, at least. Oh, in this circumstance, or in my red and blue markings, if A is not allowed to be 3, and this isn't a mine, it has 1 right now, and it's not allowed to be 2, that means it means that A would have to be 1, and also both of these would be gone, thereby forcing this to be a mine. And since E could not be 2 or 3, but it has 2 around it, that's a contradiction actually, and therefore, yes, okay. So that's what I need to figure out. Okay, this A is allowed to be 5, and in fact it has to be. That makes E3, that makes that gone, that makes that gone. Okay. C, what is my C data? Either 1 or 3. Okay, so these are both or neither. D, it might be 0, but it might also be 2. But it cannot be 1 or 3. And since these must be either both the same, or they both have to be the same thing. They are either both mines or neither of them are mines, right? Because C can be either 1 or 3. It has 1 right now. So if I tried to put just 1 more, that would make it 2, which is actually not allowed. And therefore, since this D can also be only either 0 or 2 of the range of possibilities it has, that cannot be a mine, because that would force it to have an odd number, which it can't have. Unless that number's 5, but it doesn't have 5 spaces to make that happen. So this must be safe. This is a C. C is 1 or 3. Okay. So if D is equal to 0, meaning if both of these are gone, then that would be marked as saving everything. Basically, if this wasn't it, this D would be forced to be 2, but now this C would have 2, which is not allowed. So yeah, this is a mine every time. 2 out of 3. So if these are both not mines, then we have a problem. So they both are mines. So there we go. All right. New board. Okay, this E and the A. What information do we have on E? E cannot be 0, but it can be either 1 or 2. A also cannot be 0, but it also cannot be 2, but it could be 3. Interesting. Wait, what is C? I don't have much information on C. B can't be 0, but it could be 1 or 2. Okay, D is only 1 or 2. Oh, there are no D's on the board. Ooh, if F is non-zero, which actually, because E can't be 0, this E has to have 1 next to it, F must be 3 at minimum. It has 4 spaces, and we know it's not 0. So, basically, is E allowed to be 2? It is. Is A allowed to be 2? It's not. So let's say this isn't a mine, for instance. That would force all of this. F would have to be 3. This A is not allowed to be 2, but it has 1 right now. So either both of these are on or both of these are not. C is not allowed to be 2, but we have 3 spaces. This A can be either 1 or 3. I'm getting somewhat confused. Okay, this means B cannot be 1 either. So B has to be either 2 or 4. So out of these, 2 of them have to be 9s. Same with 2 of those. This F needs at least 1 more. It could have 2 more. This A... That's a lot of B's that have 3 squares next to them like that. That's strange. Maybe this is more interesting, because it would force this to happen. And then this A would need to have 3. Okay. That didn't do much, did it? Interestingly enough, maybe this is an interesting assumption, because that would force this F to have 4. Which would now make the E be equal to 2. And since the A, exactly one of those has to be, so C is not allowed to be both 0 and 1 at the same time. This F, yeah, since F can't be 3, both of those have to be 9s. B is allowed to be 1 or 2. This one already has 2, but it can't be 3, so this is gone. And, no, it's allowed, okay. But this then forces this here. But the A needs to have 3, so this A will need to have 3. But this A, oh! This A needs a mine there. Yeah. Because it can't be 0, and yeah, okay. So that forces a mine in the A equals 1 position. Interesting. Was I about to hit a contradiction? Maybe not. Right, this... did this or something? Ah, but that makes a B with 3, so actually, yeah. Okay. In particular, one of these must be missing, because B can't have 3. At least one of these must be missing. In fact, okay. So that makes a B equal to, yeah, it makes that, at least. Now, C cannot be 2. Okay, one of these still has to be a mine because of this B, but that means... Oh, right, but B could be 1 potentially. Let's just do this.
The pool.
I think
Well, I
this
guess
is
I'll go to legal.
because that makes B not allowed to be 1. Oh, and since it can't be 3, okay. That means, well, yeah, no, that doesn't help me much, does it?
Well, I'll just take my.
In either case. What a mess. This A is 1 or 3. Okay. C is also 0, 1 or 3. Oh, this might be an interesting idea. Because now... oh, right, the F forced that. Okay. This B... But if C can't be 3, then C must be 0 or 1, which means these are all gone. But A can't be 0, so this has to be it, so this is now gone. Okay. That actually did a lot. Not allowing C to be 3 did a lot. Also, it means this. Which means that in turn? Or does it? Maybe it doesn't. No, because this could be mine still. And in fact, it must be, because this B only has one spot. So actually, it's like that. Furthermore, yeah, okay. This A has 3 right now. It can't have 4, so actually it's like this. And okay, that did way more than I expected. Okay, now assuming this is a mine, B cannot be 3, so this is out. Okay. B cannot be 3, so this is out. Alright. C is now allowed to be 3. Are there any E's on the board? I don't think so. There are not, no. Nor are there any D's on the board. That's awkward. Yeah, that's probably why. Okay, there is an F, but those are pretty much covered already. Let's try this assumption under that one. That makes this FF4 requiring that. That puts a second one in this A, which means it needs a third one. This A needs to have a third one. I should probably think about these the A and the C together, right? They're both either 1 or 3, potentially. Well, okay, let's say that's not it. That would force both of these, thereby forcing that, which in turn forces this. Now this B has 2, so that's gone. And this A, well... Okay, so that's not a contradiction. This, I wonder... Well, that would just force that. Beyond that, it doesn't seem to do much. What about this? Oh, that's a problem. Because A is not allowed to have 0, so it must have at least 1 here. But it's not allowed to have 2, so it can't be both of those. But if this has 1, it would force this C to have 2. But if that C has 2, it's, well, not actually allowed to do that. So, in fact, that is forced. Which means if this is a mine, this would put 2 on that C, forcing an extra 1 here, which would then in turn force this one to also be a mine. For this 3C to not have 2. But in that case, this B would not be allowed to have that. Or, well, wait, hold on. No, I don't, I'm not seeing it. Well, let's just see. Okay, so those are all kind of together. If one is a mine, the other two have to be. And that will kill this. C doesn't even need to have one now. What is A? Yeah. It doesn't really have any farther implications than that. But maybe, let's say this is a thing. C's allowed to be 0, but none of these C's have 0 next to them, so it's not like that'll even happen. Maybe this is a more interesting thing, because it will then force all of this. And, oh, no, that doesn't, Oh, E can be 1 or, oh, wait a minute. This E has 1 next to it. It can't be that both of these are not it. So, in fact, both of these are it. And that other way is a contradiction. So, in fact, yellow markings are true, and both of these are mines, and that's a mine as well. And so that says, okay. Yeah, I just kind of missed that detail. There was an E on the board already. This F has 4 next to it right now, which means this A has to have 3. So, okay. 2 mines left out of these 4. So if the B is not equal to 1, that would force this to be a mine, and then I guess A would have to be 1 or 3, so these are both or neither, but that causes a problem. So actually, we need this, and there's only 1 mine left. Oh, and it has to be around the A, because the A can't be 2, so that's gone. And that forces C equals 0 because it has 0. Ah, that's clever. Okay. Yeah, an achievement. Alright. What did... Oh, because it can't have 0, 1, 3, or 4. So it must have 2. And if this has 2, then this one's not going to have 5, and that means this one has to have 2. So these are both gone. Now these E's already have 1 next to them, but they cannot have 2. The next jump up is 4. This A can have either 0 or 2. Well, it already has 1, so it has to have 2 then. It potentially could have 3 there by marking that, but it has to have at least 2, because if this was not marked, well, then it wouldn't be allowed to have 2, it wouldn't be allowed to have 1, it already has 1 and only 1 more space, so it would just be done for. Okay. This E already has 2, which means it needs to have 4, because it can't be 2 or 3. It already has 2. Oh, there's an extra space here that I didn't notice. Oh, that's awkward. Okay. And I guess the same deal with this E. It already has 2, but it has 3 extra spaces around it. Oh, interestingly enough, if this isn't a mine, then this A only has 2. Oh, wait. No. If this is a mine, that forces the A equals 3 to also be a mine, which doesn't seem to actually do anything. Okay, never mind. Aha, this E needs at least 2 more, so this C will have at least 2. But that means the C needs to have a 3rd one, which means, well, one of these 2 has to be. Because you could do something like, oh, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the C like that. And that would put 4 on the E as well, so that's fine. Could do something like that. I guess this would have to have, wait a minute. This E, it legit, oh, but it could have 1. So if that's a mine, then this could have, wait. Aha! But if these are all gone, that means both of these are mines and these are mines. Oh, and now this is a mine. Okay. What is F looking like? Okay. It has 1 next to it already, but it only has 1 more space. Okay, doesn't matter. Okay, so it turns out that's allowed. But perhaps an interesting idea is if that's not a mine, that forces that not to be because this A cannot have 3. That'll force both of these to be mines for the E to be 4. This E also needs to be 4 in that manner. This E has 3 already, so it must now be 4. This F has 3 right now, which is actually not allowed. Wow. So one interesting idea, I suppose, is this would do that, because B has to be 2. But now, since E can't be 4, E would have to be 5, and so all of these... Oh, but this E can't be not 4. Oh, wait. Right, but if this E is not 4, it has to be 1. And then these are gone, but then that contradicts this. So actually that's always a 9. Alright. So interestingly enough, this would force both of these, which would force both of these. Which now means, okay. Then F is 2. Oh, that's gone. Because F can't be 3. So actually only one of these two can be. And that means this E can't have 5 near it. So I'll put F as 2. And in fact, F has to be 2, doesn't it? Because if it's only 1, both of these are gone, which is not allowed. And, well, if it's not 2, yeah, then it would be, yeah, okay. So that and that. Okay. This F here, alright, it's at most 2, basically. This A has 1 next to it already, so it's at least 2. Could also be 3, but I know it's going to get a second one here. The C, it's going to have 2 here, and it's not allowed to have exactly 2, so it must have at least 3. Ah, so if this isn't it, then you get this, I guess. But this A now has 3 already, so these are gone. This F, oh yeah. This E, since this is gone, forces E equals 1, and these to be gone. But this F now has 1, so it would be like that. This is gone, so these have to be things. And alright. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I wonder where I've seen that number before. 3, 4, 5. So supposedly, if this is a mine, that would kill this, thereby also forcing this. Ah, the F now has 3 and or 4, but it's not allowed to have 4, so that's a contradiction, and therefore 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. F, can't have 0, it already has 1. Oh, it already had 2, so it can't have a third one. It would be, okay. Cool, up to 7 by 7 now. I'm going to be allowing 6 mines to be around things. G cannot be 0, and in fact it has to be 1, so yes, this is a mine. C can't be 0, okay, well it already has its... Oh yeah, it can. But these particular C's can't be 0 because they already have 1 next to them. Okay. That also is the same about this C, because one of these is going to be a mine, which is automatically in range of that C as well. G cannot be 0, 1, or 2, or no, 0, 2, or 3. It has 5 spaces around it. Okay, that's plenty. However, for instance, if 4 is not it, then it can't have those 4, not all 4 of them at least. Then it must be 1, which means only 1 of these, but I don't know if that really gets me anywhere, unfortunately. Okay, D can't be 0, so you can't have 0 on the D. But C can be like anything it wants in the low range, which is awkward. I have like mostly the bottom half of the board is the stuff that has clues. Or question marks. That is non-mines. D is not allowed to be 0, that's all we get. G can't be, yeah, okay. Don't have very many of those though. A can't be 0, or 2. This, that, Oh, interesting idea. Since C cannot be 3, 4, or 5, and this has 6 around it, but one of them has to be missing. So this C means that, for example, if C equals 1 is pressed, then this will have a second one on it, but it can't have 3, 4, or 5. That would force C equals 2 to also be pressed, but then this would have 3, which it can't have, so actually C equals 2, and these are gone, and I know that's gone as well, and one of these is mine. Okay. So that means like all these C's are either 2 or 6 technically, but like this C, for example, it can't have 6 around it because it only has 5 open spaces. This potentially could because it actually has 5 open spaces and 1 mine right now. But that means this C right here is a 2. This C is a 2 as well. So for example, if this happens, then these are gone. And then the D has to be 1, like that. And that gives 1 for the G here, and it could be 4. 1, 2, 3, yeah. But I guess the point is this A can't have all 6, but that doesn't really mean much. Okay, so that would force this, and then one of these two, that could be the 1 for the D actually, okay. Oh wow, I'm getting nothing at all from that. Maybe this is an interesting idea. That would force both of these to be things, but now D would need to be 2. But since C is 2, one of these are here, so this would have to be mine. That would have to not be. That forces this to be mine. This D needs at least one more, but it's going to get it there. But it could have a third one here. But for instance, this D can't have exactly 2, because if it did, it's going to have a second one there, but that would make the D equal 2 be marked, which in turn would force the D equals 3, and then the D equals 4 on top of that. But, okay. Oh, yeah. Oh, wait, hold on. What? Okay, so the point is, if D equals 2 is marked, this would put a third mine on the D, so D would have to be at least 3. So let's say it marked D equals 3, which would force D equals 4 to be marked. But now this C has 4, so it would have to have 6, so it would be like this. And now the C already has 2, so these would be gone. A would be 4. But C would have to be 6, though, so that actually is a contradiction. Okay. So in that case, this is gone. That means D has to be equal to 4. But that puts 3 on the C, so that's a contradiction as well. So actually, in this case, D equals 2 is impossible. So therefore, well, let me try to think about this in the other scenario, though. Maybe I'll switch colors? Yeah. And go back to this situation. Oh, wait, no. I originally had assumed this, and now I'm making a different... Okay. But that's fine. Let's just say... Oh. Well, let's try this. That would... force a second one here. So let's try this now. This would force a third one to happen, which would make 3 on this D. Which, like, okay, let's say this happened. That would be a 4th. Oh, but it could have 5 technically. Oh, no, but since the C already has 3, it has to have all of these. But then that forces this, which is a problem. Yeah, okay. So this C can't be 6. That's basically it. This C cannot have all 6. Because it would force this to have a third one, and also it would make these 2 9s. So, yeah, okay. So that's the thing to keep in mind here. So once that happens, you get this. And A has to be equal to 1, so that marks this equals 6 squared. But then, okay. Because the C needs a second one in addition to that A's one. Yeah. But that also means D can't be 3 or 4, which means it has to be 5. So it has 2 already. 3, 4, 5. Okay. And since it has 5, that does this. Okay, so I'm getting pretty much nothing here. Is what I'm seeing. Oh, that's rough. Interesting idea. What if A is not 1? What happens then? Then this A has to have 3 around it, right? But like I said, both of these C's can have only 2. Because I know you cannot have all 6 of these be mines, right? So, that means only 1 is in this zone, which means 2 have to be in this zone. Which means this C is done now. Because A would have to be 3, and there's no way you can fit 4 into that. Also, yeah, you get this situation. So D is either 1 or 3. This is my first 7x7, isn't it? Yeah. It just gets way harder when the size increases, like by a ridiculous amount. Okay. So much more information to think about, and I just can't handle it all, I guess. this is centered around, like what I need to focus on. Okay, so there are no F's, E's, or B's on the board, right? Yeah. So the columns I need to think about then, okay. Well, the fact that C has to be equal to 2, basically. And the C equals 6 square can be marked, but there's never going to be a C on the board that has 6 mines next to it. That's never going to happen. Or at least none of these C's on the board are capable of doing that. Alright, well, in this circumstance, what's going to happen here? Since D can't be 1, it would have to be 3, so you'd have this, but this D has 4 on it now, so it needs a fit. But this C already has 3. Oh, that's done. Okay, so in this circumstance, we have that. This C is going to give this D exactly 1 more, so actually it's going to need 3 because it's not allowed to have 2. Those potentially could be, but that puts 1 here, which will kill that, which means that's always safe. Wait, is it? Well, if this is a mine, it would force all the other ones from the C to be gone. What would it do? Oh. No, I don't think that reasoning is quite right. But these are both or neither in that case, but like, alright, that's not... Can't really get much out of that, I don't think. Okay, so let's try this. Alright, this C now can't have anything else next to it. So A is now either 1 or 3. You could have both of these. You could... but you can't have only 1 because A is not allowed to be 2. So actually it would force this and that. It would force A to be 3 here. It would... 1, 2, 3, 4. So D literally cannot be 5 in this case. Because you can't put more than 1 mine in here. So the most it can have next to it is 4. But also it has to have at least 1, and if the D equals 1 is marked, that would make it have 2. So this is actually a contradiction, so in fact that is safe. Okay. Does that mean this causes some problems? Because that would kill all of this. It would force this. A would be 1. I know there's going to be 1 here. But if D equals 1 is also marked, that would force... Yeah, no, so that kills that, I think. Well, wait. If this is marked, you could have both of those and it'd be 5. Okay. So now I guess it's possible to... What about this? is, that would force this D to have 1. Now this needs to have 5. This is gone. That's gone anyway. D has 5. This is out. This G has 2 right now? Oh. Oh, wait. It would need 4. So actually that would happen. Okay. And that's allowed. Oh, wait. Did I? What? What are these markings right now? This blue. Oh. It was probably off the assumption that that's not a mine. Yeah, okay. I'm just gonna make that the assumption just so that in such a way. Yeah, okay. Now I've already seen what happens when that's a mine. But what about if this into a mine? Then it kills those. Now D cannot be 2, so A has to be 3 now. Well, first of all, this is gone, yeah. Okay. So we're looking at this. Okay, so basically all the same stuff happens regardless of what this is when that's a mine. This is the thing that has a lot of consequences, it seems. So we can try the alternative. Now, this A must have 1 or 3 in here. It obviously can't have 3, so that forces this to be a 9. Now the D, it's gotta have at least 2, because, for example, if the 2 is not marked, then the 1 would basically have to be, because this D would then need 1. And then I'd have 1 here, and that's all it would have, but the 1 is already marked, so that's the second one, but then it can't. Oh, wait. It could, right? It could have the 1 marked, right? All that would happen is, well, now it would need. Wait. Hold on. What was I was thinking of something. I might be thinking wrong. Well, let's say this. That would force this to happen. Which now... Yeah, this D needs to have more mines next to it. It's basically this. Maybe it'd be more interesting to say this. Because then this D would have to have 2. So this is gone, this is in. Yeah, and the 2 would have to be marked for this, for the sake of this one. Obviously this is happening now. Oh, both of these are happening. Oh, so this D now needs 4. Which means this... Oh, that's a contradiction. Okay. So that means this? Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything else. Let's say this is a thing. I don't really think I'm getting anywhere with this. Well, maybe this is something, because it will get rid of those. Now, D cannot be 3 or 4, but it can be 1 or 2. Oh, and if this is, wait, what? Oh, okay, this is always mine. Yeah, okay. Because this D can't have 3 around it, so if it's not allowed to have 1, then it would have to have 2. But that would force this to be a mine, which would kill that, and these as well, and what would that do? Oh. Oh, it would force the D to have 2, but then it would, wait, it would get a second one, wait a minute, what? That would then, I forget what that would even do. There was some reason. That was marked as red, right? And that was under the assumption that this was a mine, basically. Because that not being a mine forced that to be. And so, or will this, wait, it forced the D equals 1 somehow? If this is a mine, it kills these because of the C. And if D is not allowed to be equal to 2, oh, this D, and it can't be 3 because that would violate the C. So it has the choice of being 1 or 2, and if it's not 2, then it has to be 1, and okay, there we go. And then I also got it the other way when I made a contradiction, assuming that when that was empty. Okay. What? It's already this late? Oh, jeez. I might have to call it here. I don't think I can finish this in time, and so, like, yeah. Rip. Alright, well, there's one save score somewhere that I have to figure out at some point, but alright. Having to stop in the middle of a board, I guess that happens when you get to stuff that takes a really long time, and I just even trying to imagine self-referential 8x8 is going to be crazy, but gonna just have to get through it. Alright, thanks for watching. Void out.